Okay, I'm gonna let Nick finish. He was talking about that discussion we had about Eddie Van Halen and Jimmy Page, and I think he's got something else. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, Mark, that the whole discussion that a lot of guitar players have is about you know who is a great player, what constitutes a great player, and obviously there's an immense amount of skill involved in having a great technique and so forth, and playing a gazillion notes. But also, you've also got to have the expressive capacity to express those notes. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and I always remember a quote from Pat Metheny, who once said that he he said it's okay to write to write a great story, but the speed at which you write it is not important. It's the content of the story that's important. And that is a very valid, important
Yeah.
point, because a lot of guitar players, and I include myself in it, we can get a bit carried away at times with the amount of stuff that we put into a piece of music. And I think on this particular album, I was much more conscious of not doing that as much. I think I did a lot of that on the previous album, but on this album, I think the technique is there in technical stuff is happening, but I also wanted to put more and be a little bit more sort of reflective and let the music breathe a bit more with what I did on this album, and have more of that sort of visceral, emotional feeling going off. Mm.
All right. You do like to collaborate with other people, and that's wonderful because I think it helps both sides grow, and that's
Mm.
wonderful. Are there any collaborations you wanted to talk about, or that are forthcoming, or if not?
Well, I haven't got. I mean, yeah, there's always people that you'd like to collaborate with, isn't there? And there's several people that I've been thinking about recently. Um, that I would like to at some point be able to collaborate with. There's I mean, there's a guy in Norway who you may not have heard of. He's called Jan Gunnar Hoff, and he's an incredible pianist and keyboard player. And for quite a while he's had a band with Mike Stern in it as well. So you can tell the sort of caliber of the guy as a musician, because he
Yeah.
works with people like Mike Stern, who for me is one of the ultimate fusion guitar players. He's such an immense talent. Um, and he's somebody who I kind of know a little bit, and collaborating with him has always been sort of very tempting to want to reach out to him. So maybe at some point I will do that. He's definitely somebody I'd love to work with. Yeah, because I think he's an amazing musician. Mm.
And then there's the other situation that I got to talk to you about.
Yeah.
I sent Nick a email that he should possibly collaborate with the sitar player from Sweden that was on Sienna Roots
That's right. Yeah,
album.
yeah,
And then when I got the CD, I read through it, and Nick plays sitar. It's like, why would I look for somebody else when I can do it myself? But he did a fantastic job. The Journey of Varanasi. If you haven't heard that song is definitely one of my favorites. But anyway, you
yeah.
want to say?
Well, yeah. I mean, the truth of the matter is I don't actually play the sitar. The what I'm playing is a guitar which can emulate different sounds of
Oh, okay.
certain other kinds of guitars and instruments, and one of which is the sitar. And a friend of mine lent that to me, because I could hear it as an integral part of this piece of music that I've written called "The Journey to Varanasi," which is a journey about to one of the most sacred cities in India,
Yeah.
um, on the shores of the Ganges, and it just felt really appropriate to include that sound
Yeah.
within the context of that music, because it had that definitely had that sort of flavor to it. And but I think I wanted to take it more in that direction, because it was kind of crying out for that sound to me.
Yeah.
And of course, the track that precedes it, which is the one we've already talked about, which is called "To the Stars We Shall Return," that's got lots of tablas and Indian percussion worked into that as well. So it all kind of works together to give that kind of Eastern flavor. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. Um, and I'm not sure I asked you this question, so I'm going to do it. What are, if you could choose, 3 or 4 albums that are the favorite of yours of all time, which ones would you choose?
That's always a good one when you put people on the spot with that one. Oh my goodness, what would I choose? Okay. All right. If I was to choose a recording from the 70s that had a massive impact on me, I would say Selling England by the Pound.
Yeah.
Although I know Foxtrot is your favorite, and I
Yeah.
love Foxtrot too. But I remember when I first heard Selling England, the sort of the impact it had on me as a kid, and it's always stuck with me. And I think it's just a supreme work of art, that album. So going back into that era, I would say that was a big influence I enjoyed. And then there's a band called UK. You may
Oh
have
yeah.
UK. Their first album, which was just a super group with John Wetton, Bill Bruford, Alan Holdsworth, and Eddie Jobson.
Eddie.
And that incarnation of the band only made that one album. But for me, that's just a glorious album and just one of the great prog albums ever for me. That album because
There's
it
another
had
guy. I'm glad you brought up Eddie. It would be awesome to have him play like he did with Jethro Tull, electric violin on one of your albums.
well,
He
that's
is
that. Well,
amazing.
okay, yeah, he is. He is. I've always liked Eddie Jobson, but it's interesting you mentioned that because I have actually been thinking about the next album, and having someone playing some kind of electric violin on it has already crossed my mind. So
Beautiful.
whether it's Eddie, I don't know,
I
but
hope so.
there's a few people I have in mind, but it's definitely an element I'd like to include in what I do on the next recording. I've written some melodies which I think would work really well with that sound.
Have
Probably
you?
going back to that UK thing, but also there was a track on a Bill Bruford album called One of a Kind. Do you remember that album? On that album, there's some violin, and of course Alan played violin, and a lot of people assumed it was Alan who was playing the violin part on that album. Turns out it was Eddie Jobson, who we never got credited,
Well,
but it's definitely Eddie Jobson
yeah.
who played that track on that album.
Boy, that
I
would
think,
be
yeah.
incredible. I'm
So
sorry. That
you
would
never
be
know.
incredible. I'm just.
Yeah, you never know. But
I
it's
have his.
certainly a
Well, I have a lot
sound.
of his solo stuff too, and the
Yeah,
Green Album is one of my
yeah,
favorite
yeah. Well, he's
solo
a
albums.
phenomenal musician.
Yeah.
Always has been. Yeah, definitely. So
Sorry
going
about
back to
that.
so I know going back to albums. So there's two. Those are the two albums there, which have always been very important to me from growing up. Uh, I mean, but there's other albums and other influences as well. As a musician, um, who I am always and always have been in absolute awe of, is Keith Jarrett. And I
Yeah.
suppose there are albums of Keith Jarrett which I couldn't live without. You know, if he's done that many, it's hard to keep up with the
Yeah.
amount of releases he's had. But obviously, Cologne concert and things like
I
that were
think
very, very
you
important
said
to me.
Kitaro from Japan, right?
Sorry, did I what?
Kitaro from
Say?
Japan?
No,
No. Oh, okay. He's incredible too.
no, it's not somebody I'm aware of. No.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
What was the
Yeah.
one you said before?
Before
That's all right.
what?
Um,
Because
you mentioned
I was mentioning about Keith Jarrett being
Keith. Okay. Sorry.
being a big. I'm a big admirer of Keith Jarrett's music. He's playing.
All right.
Um, so it's hard to pick a particular album by him because he's released that many, and they're all so amazingly good. But there's an album from the '70s called the Bremen Lausanne concert,
Yeah.
which was and there's another box of albums that he made called the Sun Bear concerts. He made live albums from Japan, and they're just all mind blowing. how anybody can play and make music like that is just beyond me. But that's great because we all need people we can aspire to and look up to and who inspire us to develop what we do. You know, so he's another favorite musician of mine actually. Yeah, even though he's not a guitar player. But I listen to all sorts of music. I'm very wide ranging. I like great songwriting as well. So I listen to all sorts of
All right. All right. So you talked a little bit that this guy doesn't stop. He's already working on the next one. How far into it, or any projection on when that might be released? Not that, I mean, he just released this, so
things.
there's no hurry. But
Well, you say there's no hurry, but when you get to a certain age, there is.
all right.
As they say, I'm not getting any younger. So in some sense, I do find a sense of urgency in life to, if you've got something to say and something you want to do, get on and do it because, life's not a rehearsal, you know.
Mm,
So grab hold of it and get on with it because it's not going to come again. Um, so in answer to that question, I can say that probably 2/3 of the next album is already written.
wow.
There'll be a bit more to add to it once we get into the studio and start recording. I've got another couple of ideas in mind which will probably take fruition once we start the recording process. But actually, 2/3 of the music is already written, if not more. But I like to have plenty of music so I can choose then, what's going to actually make the final album, rather than sort of having to make do amend with what you've written. I'd rather have more material than not enough, you know.
Good
Um,
idea. Yeah.
yeah, so that's where it's at with that. I mean, in an ideal world, I would like to release the next album. Maybe I think it'll probably be late October next year. That's my
Of
plan.
this next year.
Yeah, 2024.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to
Yeah,
say, my God,
yeah,
he can't
yeah.
be that
I do
too
tend to
fast.
work quite.
But
I do
wow.
work quick, Mark, but not that quick.
Yeah. No, no, no. No, no. I was surprised. I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
no,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I,
Yeah.
I
All right.
yeah, I'd like to be able to get that released by end of October next year. That's my plan. So we'll just watch this space and see what happens. But certainly would like to do that.
All
And
right.
I like to have something in mind with to work towards with it. I'm not somebody who just kind of goes along with just see what happens. I like to have something, a goal to work towards because it really motivates me, particularly with
Any,
recording.
do you want to leak a possible name, or too early? Because he
Eddie
comes
Jobson.
up with
Eddie
some
Jobson.
incredible titles. I'm telling you, and themes and
Oh,
ideas.
you want some? You want some? Oh, say I thought you meant thinking about people who might play on it because I've not that's not been finalised yet. But as regards titles, ooh,
No,
don't
no.
know.
If you
I have got
haven't,
I have got some titles. Yeah, yeah,
oh, okay.
yeah. One of the tracks is called "The Gaze of Orpheus."
Oh, wow. All right.
Yeah. So we're into mystical territory again, Mark, my friend.
Yeah. No, that's good.
But
Keep bringing
that's
it.
it's the
Keep
kind of
bringing
it's the
more.
kind of recurring theme of what I do. So yeah, because music is an expression of who you are, and
Yeah.
for me, uh, spirituality and philosophy are very much a part of who I am, and so that always kind of comes out in what I want to express with the music too. It's just so yeah, that's what
All
it's
right.
about.
The final question is always, uh, is there something that you would like to talk about that we haven't covered yet?
Well, in terms of in terms of the album,
Anything. Anything. Open for anything. This is
okay.
your
Well,
call.
I'll take the opportunity to talk about the demise of the record industry
That's all right.
and the problems that musicians find themselves in terms of releasing albums and creating music. Um, Streaming services have really, really killed a lot of creative work.
It's a
Um,
shame. Yeah.
it's a great shame, but it's really having an impact um, on the fact that you can make something, and but the revenue that you receive in return for the amount you put into it is so minimal that it makes it pretty impossible to recoup anything of what you've invested. Um, you know, record companies have deals with these streaming companies, which means that they make sure they get their nice big slice of the pie, but the
Yeah.
artists receive very little, and it's a real issue. I mean, I don't want to moan about it. It's what it is, and you have to live with it. But it's a shame because it does mean that the only way in which you can make new creative music is to fund it yourself. You know, and by funding it yourself, that really entails also receiving the majority of the remuneration from sales from the people who buy it. So
Yeah.
for myself, the only way I can do that really is through working through my website. So people can download the album or they can buy the physical CD. But I mean, I'm fortunate. I've got a distributor as well, as you must know about, because you bought your CD from your
Yep.
shop where you live, which is
Yes.
fantastic. Which is great. So I still have a distributor who is able to get my stuff around the world into the States and Japan and Europe, so people can buy it in their country without going through me, which is fantastic. So there's that outlet as well. So, but apart from that, the money has to be sort of recouped from what you sell. Um, so for me, it's about the physical CD or a download, which works best. And if I ventured, people have said, why don't you go on Spotify? Why don't you get your music disseminated that way? And I said, well, I understand the why. Get on playlists, get yourself known more. But I'd rather, be known by fewer people who are willing to pay for the music to enjoy it properly, rather than get it to, a whole load of other people who will just treat it as wallpaper anyway.
Yeah.
Because they don't. Because I think that's the other thing is that streaming devalues the music, not just the actual physical value, the currency that you pay for it, but actually devalues the artistic content of it as well.
Yeah.
Because you can very easily just flick from one thing to another, And when an artist or a musician has put a lot of time and effort and work into putting something together, and like what I do is I want to make an album that, like I said before, is like a film. I want people to appreciate it, if possible, in that kind of way. In the
Yeah.
same way that you go to the movies and you watch a film, you don't just go and say, "Oh, I just want to watch the third scene because I like that one. And then I want to watch the fourth scene from that other film that's on the other movie theater." You don't do that, do you?
No.
You
No.
go, you pay your money to
Listen to the
see
whole
that film,
thing. Yeah.
and you sit down in the theater and you watch the film. And that's how I like to think of albums, in the same way. And I think in a lot of ways people always used to do, but that is becoming a bit of a dying art for the listener. And again, that's probably through technology that's kind of driven it down a different avenue. But for progressive music of any description, it's not. I don't think it's the best avenue because it's not the best listening experience because it's not what the writer intended it to be. You know. So there you are,
And
Mark.
what?
You said I could talk about anything, so there you are.
No, no, that was
Back to my
excellent.
rant about music industry.
Yeah, and I'm going to add to it. The band Traffic. I always kind of liked their music, but never really bought an album or because they were on the
Hmm.
radio all the time.
Yeah.
But I bought the album. I don't remember which one it was at this point, but it's those extra tracks, and that's what he's talking about
Hmm.
that you don't hear on the radio or never
Hmm.
probably will
Hmm.
hear on the
Right.
radio. But once
Yeah.
you hear those, and I'm trying to think of the one, um, I can't think of the title off the top of my head, but it just blew me away. I was like, why wasn't this on the radio?
Mm.
And
Mm.
now they're one of my favorite bands of the
Mm.
70s. I bought the whole catalog and, gone
That's
back and listened.
Stevie Winwood, isn't it?
Huh? Steve
Stevie
Winwood, yeah.
Winwood. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But there's a song about sort of the end of the world. Like it's in the beginning, sounds like Supertramp's one of Supertramp's greatest hits, and actually, I think it came before Supertramp. Now I'm not saying they
Oh,
stole it
may
or
well have
anything.
done.
You
Yeah,
know
yeah.
the one I'm talking about?
No, I don't know which
Yeah.
one you mean.
But anyway, the point is that, had I not sat down and listened to all, the album through, and that's what he's saying, you miss all those diamonds that are in there. I mean, yes, the rest of that album had at least 3 or 4 big hits on it, but that one was never on the radio, or maybe it was, but I missed it. But having that album, listening to the album through, it just not only made me want to buy that album, but then the whole catalog. So, worked my way through the catalog. So he's absolutely right. What he's saying there is listen to the whole thing through. And his album is the same way. There's definitely some big hits like the one
you'll miss things otherwise. Yeah.
But those quiet areas that he was talking about in between are just as powerful and need to be heard. So go back to.
Well, yeah, that's right. I mean,
people from our age group will sit down and listen to an whole album.
Yes, I'm sure.
But it's unfortunate the younger generations, they just look for the hits. And like you say, from a movie, you don't just take bits and pieces, but the generation does, unfortunately.
Yeah. And like you said about some of the quieter tracks that I've put onto this album, you probably won't hear them on the radio. But for me, they're very much a part of the whole thing that makes the whole thing work.
Yeah, they're very important. They're sort of the glue, maybe, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely a good way of looking at it. Yeah, they're a way of pulling the other elements of the album together. Yeah.
Well, Nick, thank you very much for all your time. And
it's been a great pleasure as always, Mark.
Every minute, it's always fun to sit and talk with him. But I'd be amiss if I didn't at least say hi to Laura. Laura's, and she knows who she is. And
I know who she is too.
She's a good fan of Nick's, and
she's great.
And just comments on just about everything he does, and she's a big fan.
Fantastic, and
we just wanted to say hello to her.
Yeah, hello, hello, Laura. I mean, she's a phenomenal talent
singer. Yeah, no, she's a fantastic singer too, and she's got some things that are coming not too far in the future. But no, thank you, Nick. I really appreciate the time.
Appreciate you taking the time out to talk. It's been great, Mark, as always.
Great album. I'm already looking forward to the new one.
Thank you.
I'll tell you, if you can get Eddie, that's woo.
Oh, you never know. That would be cool.
That would be a coup. That would be really, really cool.
It really would. Yeah. Okay. Well, take care, Mark. Thank you.
Yep. Hold on. I'm gonna turn it off and we'll talk. But thank you very much for taking the time to talk here with Progressive Rock Central. Thank you, Nick. Nick Fletcher.
Cheers, Mark.